Hello, everyone. Welcome to Summer Meals Getting Started, hosted by the Food Research and Action Center. I'm Steve Hayward, FRAC Senior Communications Coordinator. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few brief housekeeping items. We expect this webinar to run about 60 minutes. We're recording the presentation and we'll send the recording and slides in a follow-up email. We also have closed captioning enabled today, so go click more in the 3 drop-down and you can turn on closed captioning if you need it. With that, I'll pass it off to Clarissa Hayes, Deputy Director of School and Out-of-School Time Programs at FRAC.
Great, thanks, Steve. And hi, everyone. I still see people trickling in, so we are so glad you could join us today for our webinar, Summer Meals Getting Started. If I haven't had the chance to connect with you before, my name is Clarissa Hayes, and I work on the summer and after-school meal programs here at FRAC, and I will be moderating today's webinar in partnership with my colleague, Kelsey Boone, who also works on summer meals at FRAC. So I definitely know it's a little strange to be talking about summer in the middle of January, but we always say that this is really the best time to start thinking about your summer meal operations and how to start thinking and planning to make sure that your program is as successful as possible. So we are thrilled to be kicking off our Back to Basics Summer Meal series with this webinar. We know that the last few years have been very different for summer meals. We know it's been very intense and a lot of different moving parts. So we're just happy to be taking it back to the beginning and talking about some of those really key building blocks that go into the summer meals programs and the different partnerships and marketing techniques and all of those good pieces that go along with it. So we will be sharing some key considerations today and some resources, and we are thrilled to have our partners from USDA FNS joining us to go over the basics of the program because they really are the experts. So we have Courtney Neubauer joining us from USDA FNS to cover that. So we do have a lot to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So the next slide here has our very concise agenda. So like I mentioned, Courtney from USDA is going to be taking us back to the basics and really going over that 101 from USDA's perspective, and then also sharing many of the wonderful resources that they have to share and to help with your summer meals programs. And then after Courtney's done, we will talk about some of the key considerations as we move forward the next couple months and closer to summertime, and then some resources that FRAC has to help support you as well. All right, and I see some people in the chat introducing themselves, so feel free to do that if you'd like. So really the goal of today's webinar is we want you to either learn or get a refresher on, if you are an old pro at summer meals, the basics of the programs. We want you to get an understanding of some of the key players and roles that come with this program and some of the next steps for planning for success. And then most important, I think, is just to leave with some new ideas and resources and contacts for getting started. All right, so next slide. Before we dive in, we always want to make it slightly interactive. So we thought we would get a sense of who is joining us today. So we do have a very easy poll for everybody. We just want to know more about your current involvement with summer meals. So soon you will see a poll pop up on your screen. And we would just love to know whether you have operated as a sponsor or site previously, if you have not operated, but you're planning on doing so in 2023, or if you are one of our friends from an anti-hunger organization or similar organization that does more work around expanding participation as an outside group, we'd love to know that as well. And then we do have an option if you are none of those, and you can go ahead and select that, and would love to hear in the chat where you're coming from. So I'll give everybody 15 to 20 seconds, and then we will show the results of that on the screen. Yes, Happy New Year. All right, so hopefully everyone has had a chance to answer that. All right, so it looks like we have the majority of folks who have either operated as a sponsor or site before, so that's really exciting. Hopefully you still walk away with some new ideas and strategies for this upcoming summer. But we also see that there are some advocates here on the line. And then, 27% of the people joining have not operated. So we hope you walk away with a desire to either be a sponsor or a site in these really important programs. Great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And then on the next slide, what I wanted to do before I turn it over to our friends at USDA is really set the scene for where we are. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but it has been quite a whirlwind since 2020. I know it's crazy to think that it's been 3 years of different operations, but again, we really do see a value to maintain momentum and ensure more children are accessing meals during the summer months. So I did want to give a quick snapshot of pre-pandemic participation. We know that summer meals were reaching about 1 child for every 7 that received a school lunch. So definitely a lot of room to grow these programs. There were waivers in place for summer 2020, 2021, 2022 that made it possible to serve meals during a time when, children and others weren't really congregating as much. There are some recently passed legislation provisions around summer meals, which we'll get to at the end. That's very exciting. And then just generally, like I mentioned already, is we really do see an opportunity to expand and grow these really important programs. All right, next slide. And the last slide, I promise before I turn it over to USDA, I think we all know why these programs are important. Research shows that food insecurity does increase during the summer months when the school lunch and school breakfast programs are no longer an option. So summer meals really do provide many benefits to the children that rely on them. So we know that they're getting the nutrition that they need when the school year ends. The other key piece to summer nutrition programs is that many of them provide educational or enrichment or recreational programs that keep children learning, active, and safe when school is not in session. And this is really key because we also know that food insecurity increases during the summer months, but learning loss does as well when children are out of school for those 3 months during the summer. The other key provision or benefit of these programs that we always like to hold up is if you are a CACFP provider or you're doing school meals because you're a school, doing summer really helps you strengthen your overall operations because you're serving the same kids, you're able to nurture those relationships, you're able to draw down that reimbursement all year round. And then especially for those summer camps and summer programs, they may not have the budget to provide meals. So opting into a program like the Summer Food Service Program can really help them stretch those budgets. All right, next slide. Great, all righty. So I'm gonna take a break from talking and I'm gonna turn it over to our partners at USDA. So again, we have Courtney Neubauer joining us to go over the basics. So I will go ahead and Courtney, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Welcome to today's webinar on summer meals. As Clarissa said, I'm Courtney Neubauer. I'm a program analyst within the child nutrition programs at the USDA Food Nutrition Service. After 3 years of operating the Summer Food Service Program under nationwide waivers to accommodate the public health emergency, summer 2023 will mark a return to pre-pandemic operations with a few new flexibilities and requirements geared towards streamlining, integrity, and program access. Sites and sponsors are transitioning back to traditional program operations while also incorporating recent updates in the Summer Food Service Program regulations. Recently, President Biden also signed an omnibus spending bill that in part directs USDA to further update Summer Food Service Program regulations. With the anticipation of these updates, summer 2023 is expected to be very exciting. The Summer Food Service Program is a federally funded, state-administered program of the USDA that was established to ensure that low-income children continue to receive nutritious meals when school is not in session, primarily in the summer months from May through September. The program may also provide meals during extended school vacations and emergency closures. School food authorities, or SFAs, have the option to serve summer meals through the National School Lunch Program, or NSLP, Seamless Summer Option, or the Summer Food Service Program. Next slide. Only school food authorities may be summer meal sponsors under the Seamless Summer Option. which is an extension of the National School Lunch Program. Therefore, it follows the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program meal patterns and reimbursement rates. However, under SFSP, both nonprofit organizations and school food authorities can be sponsors. SFAs and sponsors that operate SFSP would follow the simplified SFSP meal pattern and receive a higher per meal SFSP reimbursement rate. Next slide. The SFSP began in 1968 as part of a pilot program, which was the Special Food Service Program for Children. This was a 3-year pilot program which provided grants to states to help provide meals for children when school was not in session. There were 2 components to the pilot program, childcare and summer. The SFSP was made a permanent part of the child nutrition programs in 1975. The program was authorized at sites serving areas in which poor economic conditions exist. Summer meals were served to more than 1.75 million children at 12,000 sites. In 2004, the Child Nutrition and WIC Reauthorization Act included provisions that were designed to improve program access for all eligible children, maintain high program standards and integrity, and address the problems of childhood overweight and obesity. The law bolstered many of the effects began by USDA and led to an increased participation in the SFSP. In 2007, Congress extended simplified cost accounting, which had previously just been a pilot, to all areas of the country, which allowed for meals times rate reimbursement rather than requiring cost records to establish the reimbursement. This reimbursement structure is still used today. In 2020, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, passed by Congress, allowed the Secretary of Agriculture the authority to issue nationwide waivers for the purposes of providing meals and meal supplements under the child nutrition programs as a response to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. This, of course, allowed for programmatic flexibilities that were necessary for the health and safety of both participants and program operators. 3 years later, we're transitioning back toward regular program operations. In September 2022, the final rule, streamlining program requirements and improving integrity in the summer food service program, was published in the Federal Register. As the name indicates, this rule aims to streamline program operations while also enhancing integrity. Most recently, the fiscal year 2023 Consolidated Appropriations Act, which is also referred to as the Omnibus Bill, or just Omnibus, was signed into law by President Biden 2 weeks ago today. This legislation includes some new directives related to summer food service programs. USDA will share more information when it becomes available, and this legislation is not the focus of our time together today. Next slide. The summer food service program has certain requirements that must be met for reimbursement. The requirements included are that most sites have the option to serve up to 2 meals or snacks per day, and this includes breakfast, lunch, or snack in certain combinations. Sites must use the SFSP meal pattern, which requires that you serve at least the minimum serving size of the 4 food groups. In most cases, meals are consumed in a congregate setting where the child actually eats the meal on site. And finally, the meals must be served directly to the child. Next slide. As mentioned on the first slide, the Summer Food Service Program is a federally funded, state-administered, and locally operated program. There are 3 major players in the Summer Food Service Program: state agencies, sponsors, and sites. State agencies are responsible for all administrative requirements of the program. To participate in the SFSP, sponsors must sign an agreement with the state agency. The agreement sets forth the responsibilities of the state and the sponsor. So the state agency is really the go-to contact. The state is responsible for providing training and technical assistance to all sponsors. State agencies are also responsible for monitoring the operations of participating sponsoring organizations. Sponsors are responsible for a wide variety of functions, including supporting administration of sites and reporting to the state agency. The site maintains responsibility for serving meals in a safe environment where children can sit and eat, maintain and submit accurate meal counts, maintain food safety practices, and provide enrichment activities for participating children. Next slide. Sponsors can be considered the champions of the SFSP. Many different types of organizations, such as local government entities, school food authorities, parks and recreation agencies, and nonprofit organizations can become sponsors. Sponsors are the glue that holds the summer food service program together and are responsible for a wide range of functions. First, they accept all financial and administrative responsibility for the program. Second, they manage the food service and make sure the meals meet USDA nutrition standards to provide children with nutritious food. Sponsors also train the sites and their staff. They monitor the operations at each meal site. They submit claims to the state agency for reimbursement, and they ensure foods or prepared meals are procured correctly. Sponsors applying to participate in the SFSP are required to demonstrate financial and administrative capability for program operations and to accept financial responsibility for total program operations at all sites at which they propose to conduct a food service. Demonstration of financial and administrative capability could include things like submission of budgets, financial records, documentation of organizational structure, and menu planning. Again, sponsors are the champions of the program because they handle all of the business side of the operations, allowing sites to focus on serving high-quality meals to children and provide fun activities. Next slide. Sites can be a whole host of different places, both indoors and outdoors, where children can come to eat summer meals at no cost to them. A key factor to serving more meals to children in the summer is the number of sites, especially in rural areas. This is why we need schools, parks and recreation departments, libraries, apartment complexes, or other organizations across the nation to participate in summer meals. Communities can get creative because almost anywhere can be an SFSP site. For example, if your farmer's market is held at a library, consider teaming up there to offer SFSP. For organizations not yet ready for the responsibilities of being a sponsor, another option is to participate as a site under an existing sponsor. This is an effective way to prepare an organization to become a sponsor in future years. Next slide. With mobile feeding, sponsors deliver meals to an area using a route with a series of stops at approved sites in the community. This mobile meal model provides flexibility so sponsors can serve children who may not have access to traditional sites, potentially reaching children where they live. For example, in rural areas, children may live in an isolated location where access to meal service sites operated at schools, parks and recreation departments, and private nonprofits is often very limited. And on the opposite end, in urban areas, lack of transportation or traffic safety are examples of issues that may limit viable site location options. Next slide. Open sites are open to children who come to receive a meal. To be eligible to operate as an open site, the site must be located in an area where at least 50% of the children residing in the area are eligible for participation. Area eligibility can be determined using school data or census data. Later in this presentation, I'm going to show you some cool resources that USDA has to offer to help with this process. On occasion, a sponsor that would normally operate an open site, meaning initially open to broad community participation, must restrict or limit the meal site's attendance for reasons of space, security, safety, or control. In recognition of these circumstances, these types of sites operate as restricted open sites. The sponsors must make known publicly that the site is open on a first-come, first-served basis to all children of the community at large, but the meal service will be limited, as stated above. Closed enrolled sites are usually established where an individual group of children in need live in a pocket of poverty. Identified low-income children are transported to a congregate site located in an area with less than 50% eligible children, or a program providing recreational, cultural, religious, or other types of organized activities for a specific group of children. These types of sites are open only to enrolled children or to an identified group of children, as opposed to the community at large. Closed enrolled sites must also establish eligibility, either through individual income eligibility of the children attending the sites or through area eligibility. To establish eligibility based on the income of the individual child, sites must collect household applications. At least 50% of the enrolled children at the site must be eligible for free or reduced price school meals. Instead of determining the individual income eligibility of each enrolled child, a site may also document its status as closed enrolled site by using area eligibility information. This may only be used if a site is serving children that live in an area in which the site is located. The site information sheet that sponsors submit to their state with the application to participate in the SFSP must include the projected number of children eligible for free or reduced price school meals and the projected total enrollment for each site. Camps can be residential or non-residential day camps, which offer regularly scheduled food service as part of an organized program for enrolled children. In residential camps, participants spend the duration of the organized program in a 24-hour supervised care setting and receive a regularly scheduled food service. Sponsors of non-residential campsites must offer a continuous schedule of organized cultural or recreational programs for enrolled children between the meal services. Unlike open, restricted open, and closed enrolled sites, sponsors of both residential and non-residential camps do not have to establish area eligibility. However, they must collect and maintain individual household applications. Camps are reimbursed only for those enrolled children who meet the free or reduced price eligibility standards. Migrant sites eligibility is based upon a determination that the site predominantly serves children of migrant workers. The sites operate like area eligibility open or restricted open sites and are reimbursed for meals served to all attending children. The determination of site eligibility based upon migrant status must be updated annually. To confirm migrant status, sponsors must submit information obtained from a migrant organization that certifies that the site serves a majority of children of migrant workers. If the site also serves non-migrant children, the sponsor must also certify that the site predominantly serves migrant children. The status information must be updated annually. You can contact your state agency to be put in contact with your local migrant center. Next slide. So who's eligible to receive meals through SFSP? Any child that is 18 years and under can receive a meal at no cost to the child. So this includes babies, toddlers, middle schoolers, and teenagers. As mentioned in the previous slide, sites must be area eligible, which can be determined through a few ways. A parent or guardian can complete an income application for their participating children. School data could be used, or census data could be used. Next slide. I want to touch briefly on reimbursement rates. The 2023 SFSP reimbursement rates were just released on Friday, January 6, 2023. Sponsors receive federal reimbursement from the state agency to cover the administrative and operating costs of preparing and serving meals to eligible children at one or more meal sites. Note that this is not direct reimbursement of actual expenses. When we say reimbursement, we mean that the sponsors are reimbursed at a set rate per meal. To receive reimbursement, the meals and snacks served must meet the SFSP meal pattern requirements. The amount of reimbursement a sponsor receives is the amount equal to the number of eligible meals served to children multiplied by the current reimbursement rates. SFSP also has two different levels of administrative reimbursement rates. The higher reimbursement rates are for sponsors of sites that prepare or assemble their own meals, and for sponsors of sites located in rural areas, because we know the costs are often higher in those circumstances. The lower rate is for all other sponsors. Next slide. All SFSP sponsors must meet the minimum meal pattern requirements as set forth by the USDA at all participating SFSP sites. School food authorities, those school systems that participate in the National School Lunch and School Breakfast program during the school year, may meet these minimum meal pattern requirements through offering the SFSP meal pattern or by offering the more detailed NSLP SBP meal pattern in their summer food service program. All other types of summer food service sponsors, this would be governmental agencies and other private nonprofit organizations, must follow the SFSP meal pattern. An important difference in understanding the difference between a food component and a food item. A food component is one of the food groups that comprise a reimbursable meal. There are 4 components in the SFSP. These are milk, fruit and or vegetable, grain, and meat alternate. A food item is a specific food offered within a food component. For example, a serving of blueberries is an item within the fruit and vegetable component. There are varying numbers of required food items and components depending on the meal being served. To meet the minimum lunch or supper meal pattern requirements, sites offer a serving of milk, a serving of grain, 2 servings of meat, and 2 different items for a total of 3/4 of a cup from the fruit vegetable component. Although only 4 components are required, 5 items, 2 of which must come from that fruit vegetable component, must be included. Note that sponsors reserve the option to serve additional food beyond the established minimum meal pattern requirements. Meal patterns in the SFSP were designed for children ages 6 through 12 and may not be suitable for all children attending a site. Sponsors may serve additional foods beyond established minimums where appropriate and may also be approved to follow the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, meal pattern for children under 6 years old. Please note that sponsors must receive approval from their administering state agency prior to serving meals to infants under the age of 1 and must adhere to CACFP infant meal pattern requirements. The maximum number of reimbursable meals per day is 2 for most sites, with the possibility of serving 3 meals per day at camps or sites that primarily serve migrant children. Next slide. To meet minimum breakfast meal pattern requirements, sites must offer a serving of milk, a serving of fruit or vegetable, and a bread or grain to all participating children. With breakfast, 3 components are offered: milk, fruit, vegetable, and grain, with at least 1 item from each component group. The snack meal pattern for SFSP is a bit different than the breakfast and lunch meal pattern. Meals must contain 2 out of the 4 possible components and at least the minimum specified serving sizes. Next slide. Offer versus serve is an option for school food authorities serving meals through the summer food service program. This allows children to decline certain food items that they do not intend to eat. Per the National School Lunch Act, all other types of summer food service sponsors, that would be governmental, private nonprofits, universities, or colleges, typically do not have the option to utilize offer versus serve. Next slide. The SFSP also has requirements around meal service times. Specifically, a minimum of 1 hour must elapse between the end of one meal service and the beginning of the next meal service. Also, meals claimed as a breakfast must be served at or close to the beginning of a child's day, not after a lunch or a supper. Meals served outside of approved times can only be reimbursed if an unanticipated event has occurred. Next slide. Now I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about some of the resources that USDA offers to help administer and participate in the summer food service program. First, I'm going to point out that the SFSP landing page on the FNS website, you'll see that I've also included a QR code on the right side of the slide, because I hope that you'll go ahead, open this page, keep it open, and browse it later after our session. For those of you not familiar with QR codes, to open this web page, try pointing your smartphone camera to the QR code. A link will then appear to the web page. Click that link and you should be on the SFSP web page. If my magic trick does not work, then I've also included the link at the bottom of this slide. Our SFSP webpage is the first place to go for basic program information. And once you're here, you can navigate to most of the other resources that I'm going to cover. Now, if you're looking for technical information about program operations, go to the webpage link on the right of this slide. Next slide, please. So you can find information about our online library of all FNS policy memos related to summer meals, which you can also search by date, keywords, etc. These memos are a vital resource for clarifying program requirements and can be accessed by anyone. However, these policy memos are typically most useful to state agencies as they work with sponsors. Next slide. To get you started from either a sponsor or site standpoint, we have a How to Participate in Summer Meals fact sheet, which is available in both English and Spanish. This fact sheet provides basic top-line information about how SFSP works and how you can participate in the program. Next slide. Another resource that you will likely find helpful is the Summer Meals Toolkit. This toolkit is designed for individuals and organizations to get involved in summer meals at all levels. It gives state administrators, program operators, and community partners creative ideas and resources to make summer meal planning easy. This is a go-to guide when you're either starting from scratch or looking to expand or jazz up your summer program. Next slide. We also offer a number of guides, which were formerly known as handbooks, that provide a wealth of program information in a user-friendly format. As you can see, we have guides for the different players, such as state agencies, the sponsor, and the sites. These guides are actually probably the #1 go-to document for program operators. The SFSP guides were redesigned and reformatted for ease of use the last time they were published, which was a few years ago. So they are a little prettier and include more hyperlinks than previous versions. Next slide. Next, we have the Summer Food, Summer Moves Resource Kit for summer meal site operators, which includes an operator activity guide with nutrition education activities and kid-friendly recipes, educational posters, promotional flyers, an activity placemat, and a set of 6 different educational handouts for parents and families. This kit can be used in any type of summer meal site and is available in both English and Spanish. Next slide. The Institute of Child Nutrition, or the ICN, is an entity outside of USDA that receives federal funding to help support our nutrition assistance programs. So, of course, they are one of our key partners for development and training resources. The ICN creates posters and guides for each of the child nutrition programs, in addition to webinars and podcasts. They have a wide variety of resources. The ICN website includes a wealth of information that's important for summer sponsors and sites, such as setting up proper hand washing stations and calibrating a thermometer to check food temperatures. You can check out their full line of resources at the link at the bottom of this slide. Next slide. In addition to technical assistance and guidance type materials that I've covered so far, USDA has developed some great mapping tools to help identify geographic areas of unmet need and to connect families with summer sites. First is the Capacity Builder, which allows users to search for summer meal sites by zip code and other attributes. For example, they can search to find sites that qualify at the gold level for our USDA Turn Up the Beat Award for Excellence in Meal Service, or sites that are hosted on multifamily properties. The Capacity Builder map allows users to visualize layers of information, such as area eligibility data, existing sites and potential site locations, whether that be multifamily housing units, libraries, museums, schools, and more. It's a powerful tool state agencies and sponsors can use to evaluate the previous summer's performance, as well as identify areas where there are gaps in summer meal access and potential opportunities for expansion. Next slide. We also have a companion data tool called the Area Eligibility Map. This map allows users to confirm eligibility of summer meal sites by accessing census tract and census block group data. On this webpage, you can also find additional links to information about how to calculate area eligibility. Next slide. Perhaps the most important map that we have is our Summer Site Finder, which is designed to be used by families. The Site Finder helps children, parents, and others quickly and easily find summer meal sites operating near them. The mapping tool allows users to enter an address, city, state, or zip code to find up to 50 nearby locations, along with their physical address, the hours of operation, and contact information. During the pandemic, the Site Finder was expanded and double branded as Meals for Kids. So just so you know, both terms, the Summer Site Finder and Meals for Kids, refer to the same tool. Next slide. Finally, another tool that we have for families is the Summer Site Finder text number. For those of you who were familiar with this number in the past, please note the number has changed. It was changed last year. The 97779 number that was previously in use is now discontinued, and the new number is the one bolded on this slide. It's more of a regular phone number, 914-342-7744. Using a new number, families can text summer meals or a question that may contain a keyword such as summer or verano for Spanish to receive an automated response to resources located near an address and/or zip code. This concludes my portion of the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you've learned a good bit about the Summer Food Service Program and some additional updates that can be expected this summer. And I'm now going to turn it back over to Clarissa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Courtney. I will just say that that was amazing information, a lot of resources. We will make sure that all of that is included in the follow-up from today's webinar. And then just on top of that, I'm definitely going to steal the QR code idea. And I'm not paid to say this, but I have to say the administration guide and the capacity builder, I probably look at least once a week. So those are really amazing resources that I highly recommend everyone check out if you have any questions on summer meals. Awesome. Alrighty. So for the rest of the presentation, I wanted to conclude with just some things to think about as we go through and get closer to summer 2023. And then we also have more webinars in the series that I wanted to highlight, because we know that this is really just scratching the surface of what it takes to run a summer meal site. And we want to make sure to provide you more information. So like Courtney mentioned, sponsors really are the backbone of this program. So thinking ahead, if you did not answer earlier in the poll that you are a sponsor, is this something that could fit into your current operations and really complement that? Or do you see there's a gap in your community where there isn't a sponsor operating that you could fill? I would highly recommend connecting with your state agency for any trainings or information that they can provide, because they are starting to share that information. I know that USDA also has a really handy contact page on their website of all the state agencies. So if you aren't sure of who to reach out to in your area, we can help you connect to them. And then if you are a sponsor and you're thinking about your service area, looking at a capacity builder, are there gaps in site access? Are there places where children are naturally congregating where there isn't a summer meal site, like a apartment complex or a library or a park or a school? And then just one thing to add as you think about sites, I mean, we want to make sure there are enough sites for all children to participate, but I think there are definitely key aspects of that. So the impact, are the locations safe? Are they accessible? We want to make sure that children obviously don't have to like cross a busy road or go too far from their house to get to these summer meal sites. So those are just some key things to consider as you start to plan and, you know, pull up the map and see what else has been happening in your area. I would say that January and February is also the time to start thinking about the partnerships that you've already had and where you can really expand those. We know that partners are so key to this program, whether it's around promotion and outreach or volunteering with meal service, leading activities at sites, engaging parents. There are so many ways to get other organizations involved. So you don't have to do everything yourself, and we don't have to be in silos. So start to think, you know, could you have a kickoff meeting where you invite different people around the table and talk about those gaps and talk about the outreach and all those really key components? And we even have some sample agendas that can help shape those meetings. And then I would say it's never too early to start thinking about marketing and outreach, whether you are using your state agency's materials, whether you have used your own materials in the past, what has been effective for reaching families. We know that the language used around promotion can be really sensitive and can really make a difference about how willing families are to participate. So making sure that the information is up to date, that the time is right, that there's a number that they can call to confirm, all those pieces are really important as we start to think about marketing and making sure families are aware of these programs, because that really is a number one barrier that we often hear about summer meals. Is just the fact that families don't know that they're eligible or they don't know what it is. So next slide, please. I did want to highlight some of the resources that we have. And I always say that if we don't have it, we'll either find a partner who has it, or we'll create it for you, or we'll connect you to someone who knows what you're talking about. But some of the key resources that I wanted to highlight. So every year we do release a report on participation. So if you're curious to see what participation levels are in your state, we have our Hunger Doesn't Take a Vacation, the summer nutrition report. So you can see how your summer participation compares to lunch participation, which I think, you know, if you are looking to engage policymakers or elected officials or get more people to the table, sometimes people really respond to data and like to see that, and maybe even some healthy competition compared to another state. So that's a really important resource. And then we also have a eligibility mapper. So if you are curious whether an area near you is eligible, you can use our mapper, which we've had for, I think, almost 10 years now, but it's a great resource. And then one of our future webinars, we'll be thinking about menu development. I think that's actually in 2 weeks. So we will be talking about menu development and how we make sure we're serving high quality meals that keep kids coming back to sites. So we have a resource on using local foods and then just different ways to work with vendors to make sure you're serving the meals that you want to serve. And then last but not least, we do continue to put out case studies and best practices. So whether you're interested in learning how to engage libraries or hospitals or rural access, we have those materials and more on our website, frac.org. And I think for future webinars, I'm going to get a little QR code to add to the slide to make it easier for everybody else. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is the beginning of this series on summer meals. So we will be talking about menus. We will be talking about recruiting and retaining meal sites. We're going to talk about planning and partnerships. And then last but not least, we'll be talking about how you can really dig into creating those outreach and marketing plans. So on the next slide, and I see this just came through, so this really queued it up well. Like was mentioned, there were some exciting summer provisions included in the omnibus bill. So my colleague, Kelsey Boone, who leads our pandemic and summer EBT work, is going to give a brief overview of the summer EBT pieces that were included, and then I will add on at the end. So Kelsey, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for that update.
Great, thanks, Clarissa. So the omnibus established a summer EBT program, which is great for students. The provision begins in summer of 2024, so that would be next summer. Just want to stress that this summer, 2023, will operate under the pandemic EBT program with some modifications from past years, including an adjusted benefit level, which is at $40 a month. So that will operate under the pandemic EBT program for summer of 2023. And then for summer of 2024, summer EBT will go into effect. It is a nationwide program, but it is not mandatory for states or tribal organizations or territories. All entities have to opt in, and states have to notify USDA of their intention to run the program by January 1st of each year and must submit a management plan by February 15th, beginning in 2024. So that is not for this year, once again. The benefit for the summer EBT program will be $40 a month with a max of $120. This will be adjusted for inflation next year, beginning next year. So it may not be right at $40. It's going to be adjusted for 2024. As far as the way that it's operated, states will use a SNAP model in order to distribute benefits, but tribal organizations are able to use a WIC model. And the big piece of this that is going to be difficult for states is that they have to provide 50% of the administrative funding for the program beginning in 2024. So those are the big pieces of summer EBT. There's a lot more nuance and a lot more detail, and I will actually put, we will send out, whenever we send out our follow-up email, we'll send out our summary of this provision, which includes a lot more detail. Clarissa?
Great, thank you, Kelsey. And yes, we will definitely make sure that everybody has that information for summer EBT. And we really, summer food and summer EBT really go hand in hand. And we know that sometimes summer meal sites don't necessarily work for communities. So having summer EBT in place is a really key way to make sure that children have the nutrition they need during the summer months. So we're very excited about that. Now, it doesn't necessarily fit into the summer food conversation as far as, summer food service program goes, but we wanted to make sure that people had that update. And then the other small provision that was included in the omnibus around summer was a provision around a non-congregate option for those instances in rural areas where there are no summer meal sites. So that is something that will be allowed in summer 2023. And I know USDA and state agencies will be working out the details of that, and we'll definitely have more information to share. So with that, before we close out, I did have a couple questions come through over email when we set up this webinar, and there were definitely some themes to those questions. So I have a few queued up that I would love to ask Courtney before we go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. So the first question is around is if there is a federal deadline for becoming a sponsor.
Although there is a federal deadline, the SFSP is administered at the state level. So federal regulations require that all sponsor applicants be submitted to their state agency by June 15th. But states can establish an earlier annual deadline, but are also encouraged to work with sponsors wishing to apply after the state's earlier deadline.
Wonderful, thank you. So it sounds like if you are at all interested, to definitely reach out to your state agency to learn more about their training and application deadlines. Great. So the next question is one, Courtney, I know you touched on earlier, but can you share, will any of the COVID-19 waivers from last summer be available this summer, summer 2023?
So beginning in March of 2020, we know that Congress granted USDA special emergency authority that allowed USDA to equip summer sponsors, schools, and other child nutrition operators with a much needed extra resources for the unprecedented COVID-19 times. This authority to issue the number that we saw of popular flexibilities such as waivers for area eligibility and higher reimbursements for the seamless summer options have all now expired. Therefore, the nationwide waivers that were available in the past 3 summers will not be available for summer 2023. This summer presents an opportunity for us all to transition back to regular program operations.
Thank you. All right, so next on our list of questions, and we just have a few more, is around serving meals to parents or guardians. So the question is, can I provide meals to parents or guardians that come to sites with their children?
So sponsors always have the option to serve meals to anyone. However, only the meals that are served to children can be claimed for reimbursement. So there's also additional rules that apply when a sponsor chooses to serve meals to adults. So any sponsor that wants to serve adults should contact their state agency for those additional requirements.
Wonderful, thank you. That's very helpful. All right, so the next question on our list is, and this fits in with Kelsey's update, can children still receive summer meals if their communities are participating in pandemic EBT?
The short answer is yes. Children receiving meals through the Summer Food Service Program can also receive pandemic EBT or PEBT benefits if their community is participating in PEBT. So there's no restriction there.
Great, thank you. And the last question on our list is, can you share what impact will the recently released summer food final rule have on this summer?
So overall, the purpose of that streamlining program requirement and improving integrity summer rule was just to clarify, simplify, and streamline program administration. The rule will be in place for summer 2023. The good news is this webinar today indeed covered many of those components that are included in the final rule. But if you would like to learn more about that rule, we have posted a recorded webinar on the USDA website specifically related to that streamlining rule. And Clarissa, I have shared with you the link to that webinar if you would like to share that with all the participants.
Yes, I can definitely do that. And I was on that webinar and it was amazing with a lot of great information. So we'll make sure that everybody gets that. Great. Well, those were the main questions that we had come through, but I would say just in the interest of time, if you do have any questions, feel free to add those. We'll make sure that those are captured and we'll share those out in the follow-up email along with all the resources and the recording of today's event. And what I wanted to leave you all with is my contact information here. So chayes@frac.org, as well as my colleague, Kelsey Boone at frac.org. I did not put Courtney's email in here, but I'm sure she would be happy to answer questions. But I would just say, you know, we do see this time as being so critical to thinking ahead. I know the next couple months are going to go by so fast. So if you at all have any questions around summer, if you'd like us to join a call and chat through things or connect you to partners or help develop resources, we are here for you We love talking about summer meals and would be happy to keep that conversation going. So our email is always open. Feel free to reach out to us. And I hope you will join us on our future webinars that are happening over the next couple months on summer meals. So I just wanted to close by thanking Courtney from USDA for joining us and sharing such great information and all the wonderful resources that USDA has. We really appreciate and value their partnership on this. And yeah, we are just excited about summer 23 and working with all of you moving forward. So I hope you have a great rest of your day and we'll talk soon.